Yeah, we're ready for business, everybody. Okay. Welcome tonight. Beautiful, wonderful, glorious, and educational, and most importantly, motivational Torah lesson. We endeavor, by the time we finish, everyone should walk out of here motivated to produce, motivated to produce as we should be. We're going to discuss this week, we have a double parsha. It's called Tazria and Mitzorah. Tazria Mitzorah has one theme that connects both portions together, and that is the theme of a Mitzorah, Tzara'as. Tzara'as is a skin disease, not a leper. It's not leprosy. It's a skin disease, which is a spiritual skin disease, which also manifests itself in the physical realm. What's the proof that it's not a skin disease? It's not leprosy as it's mistranslated. The proof is simple. You can have tsaras on your clothing and you can have tsaras on the walls of your home. Have you ever experienced a skin disease on clothing or the wall of your home? No, that's not possible. Also, how do you treat tsaras? Usually, if you're sick, you go to the doctor. If you have tsaras, you don't go to the doctor for healing, you go to the Kohen. It is a spiritual disease that manifests itself in the physical realm, either a discoloration of the skin or a discoloration of your clothing or a discoloration of the wall of your home. Why did someone receive this? It could have been for a number of reasons. Sometimes there was a blessing. God on the home, God wanted you to knock down the wall, so you find a hidden treasure inside the wall. But for the most part, this is considered to be something which is a punishment for gossip. Gossip, lashon hara, speaking negative and not nice about other people. This is the punishment. So we're going to discuss today for a moment. Let us discuss what the Torah says. What is the remedy if someone gets tsaras? So you get tsaras, the Kohen examines you and he says, yes, this indeed is tsaras. Then you must be removed from the Jewish camp. You must be removed and put into isolation outside Jerusalem, outside of the Jewish civilization. And over there, you would spend a week. The Kohen would re-examine you. And fast forward, if they found that tsaras left no longer there, so then you can come back. However, you had to bring a special offering. So here's what the Torah says in the Parsha. This shall be the law of the person afflicted with tsaras on the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest. The priest shall go outside the camp, and the priest shall look, and behold, the lesion of tsaras has healed in the afflicted person. Then the priest shall order, and the person to be cleansed shall take 2 live, clean birds. So number one, he has to take 2 live, pure birds, kosher birds, a cedar stick, a strip of crimson-dyed wool, and a hyssop. 4 things. The priest shall order, and one shall slaughter the one bird into an earthenware vessel over spring water. As for the live bird, he shall take it, and then the cedar stick, the strip of crimson wool, and the hyssop, and along with the live bird, he shall dip them into the blood of the slaughtered bird over the spring water. He shall then sprinkle 7 times upon the person being cleansed from tsaras, and he shall cleanse him. He shall then send away the live bird into an open field. So you bring 2 birds, one you slaughter, or one you send away. Okay? This is, in the nutshell, the process of purification, of re-entry back into the community after you have been diagnosed with tsaras and you have been found to have passed tsaras. It has passed from you, you're cure, and you're pure. So, as I mentioned, the primary reason for tsaras is gossip. And our commentaries explain that each one of these 4 items that were to be brought in the temple, they were actually very specific, and connected in a very deep moral way with the problem and the resolution to the problem. Why does someone get saras? For gossip. Gossip is what birds do. They don't stop chirping. They tweet all day. What do you think they're talking about? What's going on in everyone else's life? They don't stop. They're constantly making noise, right? So birds, we understand why. Chit chat. They're chattering all day long. Why a cedar stick? And here's where it's important to know the following thing. The reason or the foundation upon which gossip lies is arrogance. Humble people don't feel worthy to talk about other people's business. The only reason why you would talk about someone else's business, what's going on in someone else's life, is because you're feeling arrogant. You're feeling more important than, or more valuable than, or worthy of talking about what's going on in someone else's life. If you're truly humble, you would mind your own business. And this is where the cedar wood, because the cedar wood is a very tall and strong tree. This is reflective of the person who's arrogant, who thinks that they have a right to be chatting about what's going on in other people's lives. That's the problem. The bird is the problem, the chit-chat coming from arrogance. But what's the solution to the problem? The solution to the problem obviously must be, if arrogance is the root cause of the problem, so humility must be the remedy. The remedy is humility, which is expressed in the crimson-dyed wool and the hyssop. As Rashi explains, that a person must humble himself from his haughtiness, like the worm which infested the berries from which the crimson dye was extracted to color the wool, and the lowly hyssop. So this gives us what seemingly is just a random 4 items that the Torah lists. This converts that from being random to actually being very meaningful and purposeful when we understand the meaning behind each and every one of these items. We have to abandon our ego and trade it in for humility. If we can do that, we will be doing just fine. We got that? We good? Yes.
We don't have the Saras now. We don't have sacrifice. If we do get it, but we still do what you want. So, like, say now, if we say, I said something yesterday, I shouldn't have said that. It was wrong. What can we do besides saying we're not going to do it?
Great question. It's a very good question, which leads me to the following story that they say a person would speak a lot of Lashon Hara. He was known for blurting out everything that came to his mind, and unfortunately got himself into trouble many times. And although it felt good, and he felt very arrogant and haughty, but eventually he had a moment where he regretted his behavior. So he felt horrible about his uncontrolled mouth. And he went to the rabbi to seek advice. He said, Rabbi, I feel horrible. I feel terrible. I've been doing this and speaking gossip about other people and saying things and shooting my mouth off all the time. And I know that I've done wrong. I feel horrible. I'd like to do tshuva. I'd like to repent. Please help me, give me advice on what I can do. So the rabbi told him, if you want to learn how to control your mouth, so this is what you have to do. He said, go take a down pillow from your house. You know this. He said, take a down pillow from your house, and then you should take the pillow and go to the street, cut open the pillow and let the feathers fly out. And then you'll be cured you'll be forgiven for your sin. So the man thought the rabbi was a little strange. What type of remedy is this? So, but he said, the rabbi said so, so I'm going to listen. People in those days would listen to the rabbi. So he goes home and he takes a down pillow and he goes out to the street and he cuts open. He thinks, what am I doing? I don't know. But he cuts it open as instructed, and all of the feathers come flying out of the pillow and they go all over the place. So he starts collecting the feathers to put them back in the pillow, as the rabbi told him that after the feathers go, you have to collect all the feathers and put them back. And he started and he continued, but he couldn't collect all of them because the wind blew and they started flying away. So he comes running back to the rabbi. He said, Rabbi, I did everything he said, but I can't get all of them because so many of them flew away with the wind. And the rabbi turns to him and he says, Aha! He says, your words are just like the feathers. Once they leave your mouth, you can't get them back. They travel with the wind and they're never able to be retrieved. He said, when you understand this lesson, then you'll be cured. Then you'll truly be forgiven for your previous misbehaviors. And that will be, if you keep this lesson in mind, you'll be able to control your mouth. So you're right, we don't have tzaras today. The reason why we don't have tzaras today is discussed at length in the mystical parts of Torah. But suffice it to say for now, without getting into detail, that because tzaras was a spiritual disease, it could only afflict someone who is spiritually in tune. You have to be operating on a spiritual frequency. That in that frequency, tzaras attaches to you. But because we nowadays no longer operate in that heightened spiritual frequency, we're on a much, much lower level. So tzaras doesn't take effect on us. It's not an advantage. It's really it's a sign of our weakness, not of our strength. Our spiritual weakness, not of our spiritual strength. Not because we're not talking Lashon Hara, no, because we're talking a lot of Lashon Hara, it's just we're not getting the spiritual slap on the wrist, as we would say, because we're just not spiritually capable. We don't operate in that realm anymore. So that's why we don't get tzaras today. So what does someone do if they speak Lashon Hara? It's a very big problem. It's a very big problem. You have to ask forgiveness, as with all other sins. It's one of the sins that the Talmud says every one of us transgress every day. It's very difficult to guard your mouth. People spend a lot of time working on it, and it still doesn't always help. Very important. But humility, work on your humility. Based on what we're saying now, if we recognize to humble ourselves, not to think of ourselves as worthy of talking about someone else's life, what's going on in someone else's life, just to mind their own business. That would be the biggest and greatest way that we could prevent ourselves from going in that direction. And if you found you did transgress, as best as you can, try to collect the feathers. Apologize for what you said, about whom you said it. Yeah, to the person spoken, to the person whose information and privacy you have breached. Okay, but let's continue. So now that we're focused on the offering that the person brought, we explained why the bird, we explained why the cedar wood, we explained why the crimson wool, we explained why the hyssop, but we didn't explain why two birds. Why not only one bird? Why must we have two birds? And over here, the Kli Yakar gives us a fascinating insight, a truly fascinating insight. And that is, words are not bad. Torah wants you to know that words are not bad. Words are potent. It's not that we want you to shut your mouth and to stop talking. Oh, I spoke Lashon Hara, okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Keep my mouth closed. That's not what we want. That would be if there would be one bird. Oh, you open your mouth, so we slaughter the bird, we have to kill the chit-chat, we have to stop the talking. But Torah says the second bird. What's the second bird representing? Good talk. Don't shut your mouth, but change the way you speak, because your words are needed and they're powerful. So if you can change and use your words that are powerful for good, now that's what we're looking for. We don't want to shut you down. We want to hear you. We want your voice to be part of the discourse. We want your voice to be heard. But just say it in a positive, appropriate way. And then your words will travel, and together with the potency of the words, they'll have a positive impact. That's why we have a second bird. fascinating idea of the Kli Yakar, different than what many people traditionally think. Now, for the remainder of the class, we're going to talk about a very interesting law. And that is, on the 8th day after this, the Torah says, Yikach shnei kvasim tmimim. He has to take 2 unblemished lambs, the kavsa achas bashnosa, and 1 unblemished female lamb, 1-year-old, tmima, complete. U'shloisha esrainim solasmin chabul b'Hashem v'ligechot shaman. 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with olive oil as a meal offering, and 1 log of olive oil. Then the Torah says, that's if you're wealthy. But what happens if you're poor? You recognize, the Torah understands. Telling people to bring lambs and to bring flour and oil, it can be a costly thing. So why is it you can't afford it? I can't afford that type of an offering. The Torah says, I'll give you a cheaper deal. What's the cheaper deal? You could take, instead of 2, you can take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering for a waving to effect atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour with oil as a meal offering. So there's a much lower, much cheaper offering that you could bring, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young doves, according to what he can afford. 1 should be a sin offering and 1 a burnt offering, and shall bring them on the 8th day of his cleansing to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting before God. So the Torah tells us that there are 2. There's we'll call it the offering of the wealthy gossiper to complete the atonement. And then there is a cheaper version. If you can't afford the wealthy package, Torah gives you the same atonement for a cheaper amount of money, for a less amount of money. You got that? Seems pretty simple, right? No? What don't you understand?
Well, what if you're a striver and you want to be in the category of the expensive one? Or you just want to be cheap and you go into the...
It goes according to your means. If you can afford it, you pay for it. If you can't afford it, then you don't have to pay for it. So if you want to pay more, go ahead and pay more. But if you're a poor person, you can't afford it, Torah says there's an option B. That's perfectly fine too. But here's where it gets a little bit interesting. It's interesting. Similar to what you're saying, but with the following idea. And that is, there's a law that says, a little legal now. There's a law that says, let's say you're a nice person. You're a nice guy. You're a wealthy guy. And you have a good friend who can't shut his mouth, but you like him. And he had this mitzvah. He became mitzvah. He went out of the camp. He went through the whole process. Now he's coming back, and now he has to come and bring this offering. Right? You're a nice guy. You say, you know what? I'm going to cover it. I'm going to pay. I'm going to do it. I'll pay for the expenses. I'll bring the offering for you to the temple. You don't have to bring the offering to the temple. Can someone do this? Can I bring an offering for somebody else or not? You're shaking your head no. But he already did his time in jail. Now it's just to bring the final act of the atonement.
That's like, he hasn't paid the fine.
He hasn't paid the fine, so you step in, you say, I'm going to pay the fine for him. Can I donate my money to pay the fine for somebody else?
Because that's, what's the downside of, having someone else take your punishment?
So it's not his full punishment. He already served his time. Most 99% of it he did on his own. But now this last percent, which can be costly, the guy says, you're my good friend. I'll pay for it for you. You don't have to pay for it. I want you to get the atonement. And I'll cover the expenses. He could. He's poor. So he says, okay. So he said, I'm going to pay for you. He said, I'm going to pay for you the fine. So according to the Jewish law, if both parties agree, the donor and the donee, he can go ahead and do it. You can do it. It's acceptable. We will accept the donation on behalf of the person who carries tzaras. Interesting, right? But here's where it gets even more interesting. What happens if the donor is wealthy and the receiver is poor? So what does the donor have to pay? Does he pay the wealthy man's sacrifice or does he pay the poor man's sacrifice?
The poor man's
How much
sacrifice.
does he have to pay?
I say the poor man's sacrifice.
Shalom says the poor man's sacrifice. Before you answer the question what you think, I'll ask the question the other way. Let's say there was a wealthy man who had leprosy and he needed atonement. And a poor guy, but a good friend, he wants to show him a kindness. He says, you've always been so kind to me. Let me take care of this for you. I'm going to pay for the atonement for you. Does the poor man, being generous, does he pay according to his own standards, meaning a poor person's sacrifice? Or does he pay according to the rich man's standards? There's a donor and a donee. There's a giver and there's a recipient. The donor is the giver, right? So we have the same case just in the reverse. So what do you think the halacha should be? What do you guys think over here? It's time to think. Dun, 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 dun. You don't think it should be allowed at all, but now that it is allowed. The poor person, he's saying he's stepping in place of that guy, so you have to take the place and play the wealthy guy. And in the reverse, the wealthy guy stepping in the place of the poor person, so he plays the poor person's sacrifice, not according to his means. You pay according to the mitzora's means. The who needs atonement, according to their means. You say always follow the person who has to bring the sacrifice. Okay, that's good logic. I could understand that. Anyone agree or disagree?
Then you can do whatever he wants.
He can do whatever he wants. Okay, that's definitely free thinking. Do whatever you want. That's an option to go with. Do whatever you want. If you're being nice, we'll let you do as you please. Choose one. Well, you have to. What's the big deal? In life, you learn how you can live a life that nothing is a big deal or everything is a big deal, right? What do they say about surgery?
Big deal.
When a small surgery on you is a major surgery, and a major surgery on somebody else is a minor surgery, right? In life, especially when you get married, certain things that you may think are no big deal, but to your spouse, that's a very big deal. That's just the reality of the way it works in life. So, what's the big deal? We have to know what's Torah's perspective. What does God say? What's the Jewish law? And here's where we're going to throw you for a loop, as they say. You ready for the law? Here's the law. We ready? Let's learn from the Rambam. Maimonides tells us the law. He says as follows. Oshir Sha'omar, a wealthy person says, Karbani shel mitzayra ze'olav. This person who has to get atonement now for having leprosy, I'm going to pay for it. And the mitzora was a poor person. He has to bring a wealthy man's sacrifice. Why? Because you could afford it. So we go based on your means. You're the giver. We go based off of your needs. Based off of not your needs, but based off of your means. You can afford it, so you pay the wealthy man's sacrifice. Go according to what you can pay for. Now, if a poor person comes along and a poor person says, 1 second, let Bruce in. Poor person comes along and a poor person says, the sacrifice of this person who carries leprosy, I'm going to pay. And that leper, the guy who carried this saras, not leprosy, the guy who carried this saras, he was wealthy. Right? So the reverse now. He has to pay the wealthy man's sacrifice. Because the guy who carried saras, he's wealthy. And therefore he was obligated in a wealthy man's sacrifice. So you're taking his place now, so you have to pay the wealthy man's sacrifice. This makes no sense. Because it's illogical. When it comes to the wealthy man donating, we go based off of the donor's means. And therefore, you have to pay the wealthy man. Like you're rich. When it comes to the poor person donating, we say, oh, no. We didn't go based off of your means now. We now go based off of the Mitzora's means, and they're wealthy, so you have to pay a lot.
So-
The temple always wins. The temple always wins. How does this work? Either way, we say you have to pay the rich man's sacrifice. That's what it is, but how do we make sense of this? How can we understand this?
Has to pay as much as he can, then the rich man will pay the balance.
And that's not what it says. But that's not what it says. He says he has to pay the whole thing of the rich man. Why would anyone volunteer? Well, hold that question. That may be the key to the answer. Well, the reason why anyone would volunteer is not because obviously they want to do an act of generosity. So they're doing it for a reason. They have a reason why. Everyone has different reasons why they would want to do it. Either they're because they're feeling generous or because they feel like they owe someone something. You know, maybe they feel like a little bit they were guilty. I don't know. There could be many reasons why someone would want to offer their services in such a way. So the Rebbe gives us a beautiful explanation to understand this. And this is, hopefully we can appreciate this. Hopefully we can all appreciate this. It's a very, very serious crime that we all commit in life. A very big crime that we commit in life. And the crime that we commit in life is that we say we can only afford according to our means of what we have now. And we live like that. But we'll see in a minute why that's a crime. What's the crime here? So let's understand. So the Rebbe explains like this. The first clause in the Rambam states, when a rich man says, I take responsibility for the sacrifice of this afflicted person, and the afflicted person was poor, he must bring the sacrifice of a wealthy man. Why? For the person who took the vow has the financial capacity. This is puzzling. Why does the person who took the vow need to bring the more expensive offering just because he has the financial capacity? After all, he assumed the responsibility for the offering of this mitzorah. And this mitzorah is poor. So I'm stepping in their place. They're poor. He should seemingly only have to pay for the poor man's sacrifice. So why does he become obligated to bring the sacrifice of a different mitzorah, of a wealthy mitzorah? So the Rebbe explains like this. The one who took the vow has no personal obligation to bring any mitzorah offering at all. That we all agree with, right? He did it he donated generously. That was the kindness of his heart. So on what basis then is he left with an obligation to bring a rich man's offering? How does the wealthy mitzorah get into the picture over here? We're seemingly simply going based off of the one who's obligated to bring the sacrifice. That's a poor man. So if you want to step into their place, a poor man's sacrifice should do it. Where does a wealthy man come into the picture over here? So the answer is like this. The whole question that we have is a legal question and it's a logical question. And I said it's illogical and it's correct. It doesn't make sense if we take on this case as being simply logical and legal. But there's a very important component that we left out. And that is that what we're doing over here is not just a financial offering. It's not just a financial, I'm going to pay instead of them. So someone said before, it's a fine, right? You're paying someone else's fine. It's much more than paying somebody else's fine. Over here, what we're talking about is there's a spiritual atonement achieved by the offering. There's a spiritual element over here. And this spiritual element changes the equation because it's much more personal than just taking on a financial responsibility. When a wealthy person, or even a poor person, but for now we'll talk a wealthy person. When a wealthy person says that I'm going to assume upon myself the offering of that individual, he binds himself as the agent of this individual mitzvah for effecting atonement for them. So I now become the agent through which atonement will be achieved. How can I, if I'm wealthy, how can I possibly achieve atonement through me if I'm only bringing a poor man's offering? After all, I'm wealthy. So it's like I'm becoming the individual through which the atonement flows. I'm standing in your place to achieve atonement. Yes, but it's me. It's me standing in your place. And as me, it's with my identity and therefore with my bank account. And if I can afford more, it's impossible to achieve atonement if you're wealthy by just merely giving a poor man's offering. So yes, I'm paying your fine. To pay a fine, it's $100, it's $200, here's the money and go pay the fine. But I'm not doing that over here. Over here, I'm taking your place. I'm becoming you. So when I become you, it's not that I lose my identity and I become now a poor person. I stand in your place. As a wealthy person, I stand in your place to achieve atonement. So the atonement is being achieved through the wealthy person, and therefore it has to come through a wealthy person's means, a wealthy man's offering. Is that understood? There, the wealthy person becomes the responsible party right now. And if I'm responsible and I'm wealthy, so I have to bring a wealthy man's offering. So now we have the question. Now let's put it in the reverse. So let's use logic. So the poor person should be the same way. I'm assuming the atonement for you. It's going through me. I'm poor, so I should be able to bring a poor man's offering. But we said no. The poor man also has to bring the wealthy man's offering, right? So how did this work? So now we have to understand like this. At the end of the day, you're achieving atonement for who? For a wealthy man, for the sinner, who in this case is wealthy. So although you may be poor, and although the atonement may be coming through you, but its final destination is who? The wealthy man. And how can, when it reaches the wealthy man, how will it affect them? It will be missing, it will be lacking, because it was only a poor man's donation. It was only a poor man's offering. So if the poor donor were himself a Metzora, then the less expensive offering would have achieved atonement because he's poor. But now that he's taken upon himself via vow to step in to achieve atonement on behalf of a rich man who is a Metzora, the atonement achieved by this poor man's offering doesn't work unless it's according to the expensive offering.
That just means the poor man is not a qualified agent. Doesn't qualify.
On the contrary, effectively what we're saying now is that because of the vow, the poor man is now considered rich. Just the opposite. You're going to achieve atonement for wealthy, and therefore we consider you wealthy. That's what we're saying now. Oh, now go pay the bills. So, but how does that work? How is that possible? He can't afford it. He can't afford it. Go tell someone who can't afford it to go pay, but they can't afford it. That's why they're poor. And that's why we're calling them poor. We recognize that you're poor. So, but we're saying, but now we consider you to be wealthy because you stood up and you said, I'll stand in the place of a wealthy man. We say, okay, you're becoming wealthy. You can't bring atonement. You can't stand in the place of a wealthy man to bring them atonement if you're going to be a poor man. So if you want to do it, you could do it. But we're going to consider you to be wealthy. We consider you to be a rich man. Okay, now it's done. Now you're a rich man. But I'm not a rich man. But I'm not a rich man. Huh? He has to go borrow. He has to figure out how to do it. But the question is not how he figures it out. The question is on us. How are we making him do it? How are we saying we consider you to be a wealthy man if he's not a wealthy man? Torah doesn't live in the... Torah exists in the reality. The reality is he's poor, seemingly he's poor. So why we say we consider you effectively to be a rich person? So that's why I said before, there's a big crime that we all commit. And the crime that we all commit is that we live in what we think we can afford. And according to the numbers, logically, we can afford this. And it makes sense. The accountants, today's April 15th. Hope everyone did their taxes already. If you didn't, I hope you file for an extension. But according to accountants will tell you how much money you earned and how much money you have to pay in taxes and how much money you gifted to charity and how much money you should have gifted to charity that you would have gifted, you would have paid less taxes to the government. That's what the accountant's job is. And tells you everything. She tells you everything. And that's all great. But one thing the accountant cannot tell you, but Torah can tell you. And that is something remarkable. But you'll understand this. Through understanding, can a person take a vow? Torah asks a question. The Talmud asks a question. I take a vow that I'm going to do a certain mitzvah. Imagine a man says, I'm going to take a vow, I'm going to put on tefillin every day. I promise I'm going to put on tefillin every day. Is such a vow appropriate? After all, you're obligated to do it anyways. What's this vow coming to add? You have the obligation on you anyways. I promise I'm going to be a good spouse. You're obligated to be a good spouse. I promise I'm going to do this mitzvah. You're obligated to do the mitzvah. If you're not obligated to do the mitzvah, so you could say, I promise to do the mitzvah, and then that's a good promise. But to take a vow that you're going to do something which anyways you're obligated to do, so what's the point of the vow? Can you say this or not? Answers the Talmud, yes, you can. You know why? Because it's extra motivation. If it makes you feel better that now it's yours, you have more skin in the game, you're going to motivate you, it's going to help you get motivated, then you can take on such a type of a vow. Even though technically speaking, it's completely superfluous. It's not necessary at all. Correct? That's why it's superfluous. You don't need to take a vow that you're going to do it because you have to do it anyways. If you didn't take the vow, you're not following? You have an obligation from God to do certain things. So what? I promise I'm going to listen. If you didn't promise that you're going to listen, you still have to do it. Why do you have to promise? What's the point of the promise?
Because you're playing it.
So do it, but you're still obligated. Whether you do it or not, it doesn't take away the obligation to do it. That's what he's saying. You're still obligated. You're always obligated. So if you did take the promise or you didn't take the promise, it doesn't change the obligation on you. The promise doesn't add anything. Usually you take a vow so that binds you to something that you're not going to break your vow and not do it, not keep it. But over here, you're bound to it anyways, regardless of whether you took the vow, you didn't. You're bound to do this because you're obligated from God to do this. You understand a little bit better now? Correct. So that's the answer why it's permitted, because it makes it more personal. It helps you. It motivates you. You feel more skin in the game. You want to do, go ahead and do it. This doesn't make it the obligation on you, right? Imagine someone comes along and says, I'm going to be a nice person, and the first 5 people that I see on the street in the morning, I'm going to buy them breakfast. I swear I'm going to do such a thing. There's no obligation to do such a thing. If you don't do it tomorrow morning, what happens? You broke your vow, right? So your vow is what created this binding of you to your word.
That's an easy vow to break, but the one putting on tefillin is.
But when you take a vow to put on tefillin, what's your vow doing? It's not tying you to put on tefillin because you are obligated anyways without the vow.
But
All the vow is doing is it's adding an additional layer
to
to it.
buying people breakfast, people will think I'm crazy. If I went up to somebody and said, "Look, I'm going to buy you breakfast," they're going to say this guy's an idiot and crazy.
Now say he's very nice. He's not going to say he's beautiful. Why do you think negative? Think positive. They'll say, look how
Depends on
good the
the
world
person
is.
knows me, maybe. But,
Look how good the world
person
is.
knows me, maybe. But,
No, they'll say, look at the Jewish people. Say, look at the Jewish people. They're so kind. They buy breakfast for everybody. So now, like this, when a poor donor becomes obligated to bring a more expensive offering on behalf of the rich Mitzorah, the dynamics work in a similar way. Although you are legally poor right now, legally, if we look at your bank account, you're considered to be poor. Nevertheless, you become bound to a higher obligation, to a more expensive obligation, a more expensive caliber offering. Why? Because by taking this vow, you now are empowered to become rich. It is the opening of a new channel of blessings for you. Who said before, why would someone do such a thing? Remember someone said earlier, why would someone do such a thing? Now you understand a new idea over here. When you go beyond what you think are your means, when it comes to giving tzedakah, when it comes to giving and helping somebody else out, when you go beyond what you think are your means, and when I say what you think are your means, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a realistic way, because they really are your means. I only earn this amount of money, and therefore I can really only give this amount of charity. And if I give more, I can't afford it. But if you push yourself to give more than you can afford, what happens is you expand your container for blessing.
Even if you're giving it to someone who doesn't need it?
No, I'm talking about healthy charity. I'm not talking about throwing money to the garbage now. I'm not talking about to buy drugs for somebody. We're talking about in this case of the Mitzorah, that the wealthy person doesn't need it. Yeah, but the person is giving of himself to help somebody else. I'm doing it to help you. I want to stand in your place to be of help for you. I want to be of service to you. You're going through a rough time now. You just were sent out of the camp for 2 weeks in quarantine and isolation. You may think people don't like you because you've been gossiping. I want to welcome you back into the community. So I'm going to take upon myself to do this for you. It's a very generous, noble thing to do. And if you do that, even though you can't afford it, according to the accountant, according to the numbers, don't add up. Logically, it makes no sense. You're right. There's a spiritual component over here. And that spiritual component adds new channels of blessings to you in your life. So what do you have to have in order to do this? You have to have guts. And you have to have trust in God. It starts with trust in Hashem. If you trust that Hashem will give you more, then you push yourself to give even more. And everything you give comes back to you. What happened was, in the book of Tanya, the previous Rebbe, actually, they came to print a certain print here of the Tzemach Tzedek, the response of the Tzemach Tzedek in the United States, the first time they printed in the United States. So he told a certain individual Jew, we called him in, and he said, I think you should sponsor the printing of this sefer, of this book, of this forum, of the response of the Tzemach Tzedek. And the person took it upon himself to do it, even though he did not know how he's going to be able to afford it. Because according to the numbers, he couldn't afford such a donation. But the Rebbe said, I think you should do it. And he said, doing it. How? We don't know. You don't ask how. But if the Rebbe said that he thinks it would be good for me to do it, I say yes. That's what a chassid does. He figures it out. He figures it all out later. And the Rebbe blessed him. As soon as he said yes, the Rebbe blessed him. And this individual became a very wealthy man. He wasn't wealthy then, but he became a very wealthy man. And he succeeded in fulfilling to pay up his pledge. And he sponsored everything by himself. He didn't even need any partners. He did everything all on his own. And the previous Rebbe said at the time, he said like this, when I asked that Jew to make this pledge, it was truly beyond his means. And I knew it was beyond his means. I knew that I was asking him to donate money that he did not have. Sometimes you go to a wealthy person, you ask them to donate. You know that they can afford it. And it's just a matter of how generous or stingy they're going to be. That's what it is. But sometimes you go to someone and ask them to donate money, and they don't have the money. So most times you wouldn't ask them, because why would you put them in that uncomfortable position? They don't have that amount of money to give. But a Rebbe is different. And a Rebbe saw that although this person does not have the means to make such a donation, nevertheless, he asked him why. He said because when he said yes to the pledge, he opened new channels of income. And this is what enabled him to become wealthy and fulfill his pledge. And this is what it means we're talking about over here. When God sees that a Jew reaches beyond their personal limits, they're ready to extend themselves beyond that which we usually think we can extend ourselves. We ignore the fact that we're poor. And when I say poor, it could be poor financially, but it could be in Oni Elabadas, it can be poor when it comes to knowledge. And you say to yourself, how can I possibly welcome someone into shul? Who am I? I barely know myself how to read. I barely know myself what's going on. How can I welcome them into shul? I'm too poor to do such a thing.
Sounds like me.
Comes along the Torah in this week's parsha, and the parsha says, if you stand up and you say, you know what? I don't know. I am not the right guy for this job, maybe, but I want to be of service. And you stand up and you help somebody else that walks in, you welcome them and you give them the siddur, and you extend yourself beyond that which you think you can afford, that which you think you have, so you achieve wealth, because that act in and of itself opens up new channels of blessings for you. It's a fascinating teaching over here, because we live in a box all the time. It's a box. Some boxes are bigger, some boxes are smaller. But we always say this, I have a limit. I have a limit. There's a limit to how much time I can study Torah. There's a limit to how many mitzvahs there's a limit to how much time I'm allowed to spend in shul. There's a limit to how much I can spend on giving charity. There's a limit on how many kiddushes I'm allowed to sponsor. There's a limit. We always put ourselves in a limit for something. But the Torah is teaching us over here that whenever we think we reach the limit, if we push ourselves out of that box, if we pop open that box and say, I'm actually not limited, because I've been asked, because there's an opportunity, because I see someone else that I can help, I'm going to say yes to helping, even though I don't know if I have the time, even though I don't know if I have the wherewithal, even though I don't know if I have the knowledge, even though if I don't know that I have the money, but there's an opportunity, someone needs help, I say yes, you'll see that God opens up new channels of blessings for you. You'll become, when it comes to time, there's nothing more valuable in life than time. It's the most valuable thing we have, and yet we mistreat it worse than anything. We waste time as if we can get it back. There's a famous saying in the Talmud, Odom doeg al ibud momen. A person worries all the time about losing money, but they don't worry about losing time. Money you can always get back. Time you can never get back. Not coming back to you. Not coming back to me. So you ask yourself, how does it work? I only have a limited amount of time. I don't have time for this. You think I don't have time? That's why you have to have hatzlocha. You have to have success in time. You can be working 12 hours on a project. Whatever the project is, working all day on it. And then at the end of the day, you're frustrated, didn't get the job done. Didn't get the job done. And sometimes in a short amount of time, you find success. It's all about hatzlocha, success. You have to have good mazel and good hatzlocha with time. You have to know how to break down time, how to spend your time wisely. It's a skill. It's a skill. Not everybody has it. You're able to see the future. How can I plan accordingly, right? What should I do now? What should I do next? It's all part of the puzzle of every single day. So if you extend yourself more than what you think you can do, Hashem promises, and this week's parsha we read clearly, that God extends also more to you. And you now become wealthier in money, become wealthier in time. But what you have to do is you have to step up to the plate. Don't look for the excuses. Excuses, there are plenty. And it's not to say that we won't excuse you. If you say you can't, we'll give you the excuse. No one's going to have anything against you. But you missed an opportunity. So the lesson we could all walk away from here is that whenever there's opportunity to do good, if there is ever opportunity that opens itself, that presents itself to you, to be of help to somebody else, say yes. Say yes right away. You work out the details later. All right. Anyone have any questions?
I think it's a very good thing.
You're agreeing?
I'm agreeing.
Okay. I agree with you, but you agree with me.